There's a conversation going on right now in Sri Lanka of math teachers as a result of this. And I just have to tell you, when I was in school, I just never imagined I would ever be part of a day in my lifetime when I could be standing in a room and have teachers 3/4 of the way around the world in Sri Lanka talking about mathematics. So for a guy my age, this is like little kid stuff. It's all magic. Love it. And what we're going to try to do is actually bring some of that commentary in. So I'm just going to wait for a colleague to grab me some stuff. That was quick. Thanks. I got to get my glasses down. And one of the things that someone said is when the flip works, it works really, really well. And in the hands of a teacher who doesn't necessarily understand it, it doesn't work well. So let's just agree now that the role of the teacher is more important than ever. That these things really need to be thought out very, very well. And I certainly agree with any comment we're going to hear today that the role of the teacher is absolutely essential. We also have a comment that one way to bring innovation to the classroom is to embrace social media. And just before today started, I was talking with some high school students who told me that anytime they get collaborative work, they jump right on Facebook and organize their project, the calendar, content on Facebook. And then I asked them, did your teacher organize that for you? And they said, no. We're not allowed to use Facebook in school. That's something we do outside of school. But I got to tell you, one of the things that worries me, and maybe we can get some comment on this, is the opportunity of kids who own this stuff at home, being able to do things in powerful new ways, compared to kids who do not own this stuff at home. The equity issue is something we absolutely have to address. And so I just want to comment on that and ask, in fact, for people watching today, if you have ideas that can contribute to more equity, certainly share those with us. And when the day ends, we'll try to come back to that as an important topic. Because we've got to make sure that these things are equitable. Another comment, let's see, is game environment. We have a comment that more and more things should be in game. I would love to see that if you have examples. We want to be able to have teachers with more information about students creating in real time. And we also have the opportunity of students who have global authentic audience. And I am absolutely intrigued by this concept. Are you guys ready? Otherwise, no, not yet. So I'll tell you a quick story about authentic audience. I once had the opportunity to present what I thought was an amazing portfolio of online stories to a middle school class, teachers and kids, 300 or 400. And without my knowing this, the 12-year-old who produced the online stories was sitting in the audience. So I'm presenting her stories to her, but I don't know she's there. I picked these up in Boston, flew to the West Coast, and the irony, the odds of this happening are 0. But it happened. And I was so struck by this, I asked her to come up and outline how she created her stories. She came up to the stage, and she talked about working with people all over the world, other authors and writers. They would share with one another. She had 12 stories. You could clearly see the progression of her work from the first story to the most recent story. It was an amazing piece of work. Later that day, her teacher came to tell me that she wasn't really a good student. And I was a little confused because it was her English teacher. And I said, what's going on? And she said, oh, she doesn't do her homework. So later, I had to have dinner at that school, and I sat with this girl, because I thought we had become friends. And I asked her, I said, you know, what's with your homework? Your teacher says you're not doing your homework. And she said, well, when I wake up, I have to make a pretty important decision. Do I publish for the world or my teacher? The world or my teacher? And this was before Facebook, before MySpace. This was more than 10 years ago. And I thought, oh my gosh, if 12-year-olds have a global audience that inspires them for continuously improving their writing, compared to getting a grade, which really is the moment that says you're done with the assignment, no more work, we're going to be in big trouble eventually because students are going to have higher expectations for global audience. So I'm just fascinated by the motivation of students who want to publish for the world and have an impact beyond an audience of one, which is typically their teacher. I'm still looking around to see if we're technically there yet, guys. Not yet. Well, maybe we can get some more from the folks out in Twitter land and on YouTube. Here, if you could do me a favor, just take that and put that aside. Actually, any questions from the audience? Anybody want to ask a question? Any parents here? Yeah?
I'm hearing you talk about this split thing, and I'm the parent of a 6th grader, and I'm the parent of a 4th grader. And I can tell you that my work day goes from 9 to 5, and my expectation is that my children will go to school at 8 in the morning and continue working until 10 at night. So I'm kind of over the whole homework thing, and I'm wondering at what point my kids will get to be kids.
You want to know, okay, let me just repeat what you said, just in case the mic didn't pick you up. Your own work as an adult is 9 to 5.
Yes.
And when you come home, you have another life. Family time, it's your life when you get home. You're wondering if your kids couldn't have the same kind of life. That when they're at school, they're totally focused, and when they get home, they can be kids. Because right now, they're working until 10, 11 o'clock at night on homework. And that's a little weird to you, because your own life doesn't parallel that. And you know, there is growing concern that our need as a country to be competitive with other countries, which I think is driving some of the, we'll call it mania for homework, could be redesigned, especially if we understand the brain, that students spend different kinds of time in school and actually learn more without having to do all that homework. Because if you do the homework and the brain doesn't get immediate feedback, you're laying down biochemical pathways in the brain that are wrong. So there are lots of reasons to rethink this homework, classwork, schedule. So I'm glad you said that. So you would be okay if you got a notice from your teachers that homework from now on was going to be done in class with immediate feedback, you would cheer that announcement.
I would support that 10,000%. But when you say that, then does that mean that I'm doing classwork with my kids? I mean, I'm a PE teacher, okay? I'm not going to teach my kids math. That's not happening. So I don't think that parents are qualified necessarily to do a whole heck of a lot of teaching at home past a certain point.
Well, in the flip model, which we're going to hear from a couple chemistry teachers, what they've done, and it's 2 teachers working together, and I want to point that out. It's not one teacher. And I think more and more of our professionals are going to be working together. So these 2 teachers together have videotaped every lecture they've ever done in chemistry. So all of that is available on the web. So the transfer of knowledge activity of a teacher explaining how to balance chemical equations, that's now watched at home. The solving of balancing chemical equations, which used to be at home, that's now done in school. So they've flipped it. So we still have work at home, but it's not solving problems where the brain could make a mistake, and nor do I think it's the hours and hours that your kids have now. So there's still work that is done at home. I don't know what to call it. It's not traditional homework. It's gaining access to the knowledge in the flip model.
Well, it seems to me
You could pass the mic. And if you could say the role you are.
Oh, sorry. Hi, I'm the VP of Instruction at the Alliance for College Ready Public Schools. It's a charter management organization in Los Angeles. There's a mouthful for you. But what you're saying is really crystallizing some really interesting ideas for me. I think part of the problem with the idea of classwork and homework is their very name implies this kind of time and place, whereas technology, by definition, gives us these asynchronous opportunities for learning. And what excites me about what you're saying, as I think about it, is, and I've worked a lot with teachers about this homework question, like why do we need 15 hours of homework? Homework is supposed to be practice. That's what it should be called, right? And practice, for it to happen in a structured environment where you can get feedback, totally makes sense, as opposed to practicing something wrong over and over again, which many of our kids are doing. And so I like thinking about instruction, and I love kind of more perspective on this as there's two moments. There's moments where you learn something new, and then there's moments where you process and practice it. And the learning doesn't have to even come from a teacher. It can come from lots of different places. But I guess as you describe more examples, I'd love to kind of hear about, because I think that's what I can bring back to our teachers, is this idea of when they learn and when they process and practice, and thinking about learning in that way. So I'd love to hear more examples kind of the kids that you're working with or the school we're about to hear from, sort of when does learning and when does process and practice happen, and just take out all of these names that have to do with time and place of when things happen.
And I love the notion of taking out time and place. If you want research, there's an amazing book called Flow and the Optimal Experience. Flow and the Optimal Experience is research done by a University of Chicago professor years ago with a name I'm going to now maul, Mahai Csikszentmihalyi. That's a CZ spelling if you're going to Amazon. And in that book, research was done on the best learners in the world, Nobel Prize winners, world-class musicians, world-class athletes. See, a lot of research is done on people who don't learn well. But this guy decided to take another turn. Who learns really well, and why do they learn that well? World-class. And one of the things he learned about people who are phenomenally successful is that they have real-time feedback. They know how well they're doing the moment they're doing it. So an example he uses is a world-class musician. She has an ear. She's not tone deaf like me. And a world-class musician has immediate feedback. So when a world-class musician is practicing, that practice makes sense. Now, I have a close family member whose name I will not mention, but she lives in my house. And when she plays cello, and she doesn't have an ear, I will tell you, the hour that she practices without feedback is not the same quality hour as a musician with an ear, according to Flow and the Optimal Experience. Now, with technology, one of the interesting things we can do with technology is give people immediate feedback. In fact, I'll give you the example in music that I saw here in California one day. I think there's a product called Music -1. And that's a CD series of classical music recorded. And if you're learning to play violin, and you're a high school student, you put on a pair of earphones, and you play your piece while you're listening to the equivalent of the New York Philharmonic. So you know how your piece fits in with the orchestra. Most students who go home who are in an orchestra are not practicing with an orchestra. They don't hear how their piece sounds. And by the way, you can record your piece with Music -1 and then listen. You really understand how did you sound with the orchestra. Most students don't have that. So I actually was being taken on a tour of a school, and there were these rooms, soundproof rooms, where kids were practicing with the earphones, listening to a world-class orchestra. And I was walking with the teacher, and I said, well, tell me what goes wrong. I always ask what goes wrong. Something always goes wrong. He said, yeah, we have a serious problem. These students don't want to play with the high school orchestra anymore. They think they should be playing with the New York Philharmonic. So it raised their expectations. But immediate feedback, that should be a question schools are asking. How do we give students immediate feedback? That would be a great investment strategy of buying technology. Does it give the student immediate feedback?